But I think I know what I have to do tomorrow, so that's a good thing. Tell me, what did you take away from last week? What did you learn? What do you remember? What stuck with you through the week that you didn't want to forget? Let me hear some things. Yeah.
I think for me it was like when you were talking about attending, and you were saying that when someone is attending, you're going to feel more confident, you're going to feel like you can share more deeply and stuff like that. And I just kept thinking about times that had happened in the week before and then since. And just that stuck.
So you had some experience with it. We're going to give everybody some experience with that tonight. But good. What else?
I loved your phrase, love is the change agent. I love that.
That's actually, we have a big video, and all the professors are flashed up at baccalaureate, and we used to put little sayings under them. That was mine. Because I teach it so much in my class. You know, God created us to love. And we need to learn how to do that well. And so, love is the change agent.
I loved how you talked about how you had your own soul needed to be still before you can be with someone else. And even the example you gave about being in your car, stilling down, even if you were 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
And I was a few minutes late a couple of times this week because I knew I wasn't ready to go into it. I had to still it down. That was a great example.
Good, good, yeah. It's far more important that your soul and your heart be still and welcoming to others and ready to love than it is that you're on time. You know, it's a wonderful thing to be on time, but yeah.
There were actually a few things for me. One of my favorite things he said was maybe the reason so much sin abounds in the church today is because we're afraid to speak the truth in love. And then I actually, similar to what Kara said about attending at church on Sunday, I was very conscious about staying with people instead of rushing off to the next person.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I love, you know, there's just something so calming when someone just really pays attention to you and doesn't lose that eye contact and really stays with a person. Good stuff. I'm glad you tried it. That's what it's going to take.
I know for me it's like how you were having us read the Bible verses and seeing how Jesus would, like how he displayed those actions, how he was attending, how he was genuine and truthful, and how he was like getting to the real heart of the matter.
Yeah. I'm not teaching you to be like somebody else or some great psychologist. I'm teaching you to be like Jesus. And Jesus stopped. It even says in places, we're going to read a scripture passage tonight, but there's that sense where he stopped, he looked, he paid attention. He was thinking about what was in the other's heart. He wasn't thinking about what was in his heart. So important. Yeah.
You talked about how Jesus responded with silence, and you said that sometimes silence is the best tool for attending.
Yeah.
And that really, I understand with interpersonal relationships sometimes, but for Jesus to use that as a tool with us too, that was really amazing.
Yeah, silence is a wonderful way for the Holy Spirit then to speak to us and let us in a little bit on what's happening inside of them. You know, you keep your focus on them in silence, but you're listening. Whenever you're working with someone or talking to someone, you always have one ear going towards God. And that's why practicing the presence of God has to become a way of being if you're going to really, really help somebody when you're listening to them. So, yeah.
Listening and finding a change in me already of being more about the other person than about me. You know, and even like had my one encounter, but I walked away, I could see there was much more attentiveness on my part and asking intentional questions, right, instead of just gathering.
Yeah, that focus and staying, being intentionally staying with the other.
And I'm speaking, as you're speaking, seeking wisdom,
Seeking
to
wisdom.
say, not to say appropriate questions.
Good. We're going to teach you what kind of questions to ask. I'm going to control your words next.
an interesting experience. I was having lunch with my girlfriend outside, and next to us was this dear woman. I just felt so bad for her. We didn't know if she was a man or a woman. So anyway, just remembering what you said, that respect persons, but God created them, where normally I probably wouldn't have paid any attention. So I just felt to go over and ask her if I could pray for her, and then started to share with her and asked if she'd accepted Jesus, and she said that that she was mad at Jesus at the moment, and then the Lord just had me reach out just to love her, and I've never experienced that, unless you deliberately to go out, and so that was a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah, being focused on others, you begin to love people that are different than yourself. When you're focused on yourself, you look for people that are like you, and so that you feel you have commonality and connection with them. But when you really start to love the way Jesus did, you start loving people who are very different from you, different cultures, different ways of being, sinful people, happy people, sad people. It doesn't matter. Who is the Lord pointing you to love, and you can do that. And because your soul is ready to receive them.
It's a good experience.
Yeah. So you took a lot away from last week, and we talked a lot about the three things that I said had to be present when you're with somebody, was stillness in your heart. Remember, how quiet is your soul? Safety, because how safe is your soul to enter? Are you going to, be judgmental, evaluative, or are you going to just receive who they are and meet them there? And then the third thing is, do you have the capacity to love another? How much are you receiving? Are you spending time with God? Are you in a body, another family in the body of Christ that's nurturing you and loving you and caring for you? You need to be receiving somewhere if your heart is going to overflow to other people. And I just want to say that presence, I'm glad that some of you tried it. And nobody said this, but presence is very hard. In our world today, there are so many distractions. It's very difficult to give presence to another person, to have appropriate eye contact, to hold it, to do more listening than talking. We tend to, a lot of times when we're with somebody that we don't know, we fill the space with a lot of words because it makes us feel more comfortable. Again, it's about us rather than them. And so really being able to do more listening to them and asking a question so that you can actually hear from them rather than talking all the time. To minimize your wandering thoughts. It was so interesting, my phone this morning, and then I went to school, and my first appointment was for spiritual direction with someone. And I was agitated. I mean, my heart was not in a good place to receive somebody, and I just remembered, shooting these prayers up to the Lord saying, calm my heart. And I prayed before we got started, but for the first 15 minutes into that session, I found myself wandering back. Who do I have later on today? What do I need to do? How am I going to get this fixed? Where am I going to find time? There was a million things going on in my head. How long am I going to be without a calendar? How much am I going to have to think up again, And so it was hard. And you're going to have times where presence is just really hard because the distractions hit in a place where life may be very difficult and might make it really hard for you, and it's going to be hard to focus. And then I found slowly on, I settled in and forgot about my phone and was totally focused on her. But I'll tell you, the first time that happens to you, you may not be able to get to a quiet place. And that's why I always say it's good if you know you're going to go into a situation like that to actually take some time before and lay those things aside. One of the things we do when we do retreat ministry up at Hilltop is we give them a preparation for retreat. and they spend a half hour with the Lord just making lists of things that are on their heart and doing specific things with all those things that are on their heart. So they have gotten rid of the distractions, and now they can enter into the presence. And so you're going to have to find what works for you. What works for me may not work for you, but somehow getting to that place where your heart is quiet. I just want to say that if you pretend to be present, it'll be felt. Okay? Particularly with someone who knows you pretty well, who you've been listening to intently before, say it's someone you see on a regular basis, and you've listened to them before. I mean, I saw clients every week for years, and I remember this one gentleman who I had been with for a couple of years, and I had a client just before him that I was still thinking about because I was just concerned for her. And I remember going into that session and started out focused, all that, but I was soon thinking about that other person, that I was concerned about. And all of a sudden, and he was talking, and I was looking like I was attending, I was doing all the right things, all the things I'll tell you to do, I was doing. And all of a sudden he stopped. And he said, "Where are you? Where are you?" I thought, my goodness. It was the first time I knew for sure that when you're pretending, they'll see it, they'll feel it, they'll know it. And they won't go any place in their conversation because it's your listening that makes it safe for them to go deeper and to really look at the root of what they're struggling with. So in attending, which is the very first skill, you need to be prepared to be absent from yourself. You need to be prepared to be absent from yourself. To focus on them and their experience and set everything else aside. That's not easy. You have to set aside your own interests, your preoccupations. You have to stop analyzing what you hear. You think that a good counselor is constantly analyzing and trying to see what you know. They're taking your words inside themselves and offering them to God. So you can't be analyzing all the time. As soon as you start analyzing, you've taken your focus off from them. You can't try to fix it or fit it all together or try to figure out what you have to tell them next. Don't even try to think of what you have to say next. Don't rehearse it in your mind. Just listen attentively, and when they stop, withdraw your eye contact and begin to think about how you're going to respond. That silence will be used of the Lord for them to go deeper. Take a few minutes and formulate your response and then give it to them. You don't have to have this flowing back and forth conversation that just continues all the time. If you remove your eye contact, they know you're thinking. If once you look back at them, you can give them your response, and then you keep your eye contact with them again. Eye contact is going to control a lot of what you do, and so that they know what you're doing. So you give it to them and take it, and resist solving their problem. So often we hear it and you think, oh, if they would just come to Sunday school with me, or if I could just get them to go to church just once, or, and you've lost what they've said because you're so busy trying to figure out what would be the best thing to give them or say to them or do to them or ask them to participate in. If something feels broken to you, let your compassion come to the surface, not your resolution and your ability to fix them. So you want to put fixing aside and really get into listening. I wanted to read a passage to you out of 1 Corinthians because it really talks about wisdom from the Spirit And I want you to just listen to these words in thinking about being with a person. This is Paul speaking to the Corinthians, and he's telling them about wisdom from the Spirit, which is exactly what we want when we're talking with another. It says, we do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not wisdom of this age, or of the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. No, we speak of God's secret wisdom, a wisdom that has been hidden, and that God designed, or destined for our glory before time began. You know, we so much, the wisdom that's in our heads, the ways to fix, the ways to resolve, the ways to help them, is usually man's wisdom. It is not God's wisdom. And so and God's wisdom is hidden until people come to know Christ. And so sometimes it's not even appropriate to give them the wisdom that you have, even if it has come from the Bible. It may not be time for them to hear that. They may just need a loving atmosphere in which they'll feel safe to explore their sin and their need for Christ, rather than moving into giving them the resolution. A lot of times it's our demonstration of love that actually pulls a person in. And God was very careful about when he gave us our wisdom. He said some of his wisdom is hidden to us, and because we're not mature enough to receive it. He said, however it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. Wow. Think about that. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no mind has conceived. You can't even conceive what God might want to do in this situation. He has surprised me so often. Bless you. So often, God has surprised me in a session when I ask a concrete question, or I say to that person, you know, just sit with the Lord for a few minutes and ask him this question. And let's see what comes up in you. You know, let's just see what comes up. And what comes up is so far away from where I'm thinking. And that's the Lord, because he knows what it's going to take for them to get to the place where they need to go. So our wisdom isn't the wisdom they need. They need the wisdom of the Spirit of God. And we should be much more willing to put people into a place of receiving the wisdom of God, and then help them discern that, rather than giving them what we might think, or an experience we might have had, or the way God worked in our life. Now, there's a time to be transparent with your life, but I think we do it too often. He says, what God has prepared for those who love him, but God has revealed it to us by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. For who among men knows the thoughts of a man? See, we don't know the thoughts of another person. We have no idea when we're sitting in front of them, even though they're talking about something, they may be really thinking about something very different. And we don't know that. We don't know, I don't know what you guys are thinking right now. You may be thinking about your iPhone that crashed. You know, I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking. And don't assume that you do. He says, no man knows the thoughts of a man, except man's spirit within him. People only know themselves what is going on inside of them. And they have to feel safe enough to say that. In the same way, no one knows the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. It's the same kind of thing. We have not received the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we may understand what God has freely given us. This is what we speak, not in words taught us by human wisdom, I went 14 years to school, learned a lot. But most of what I speak is God taking that, integrating it into all of who he is, and it comes out. It's not that education is useless, but if you just preach and teach what you learned, and it's never integrated where the Lord can just use it as it's needed, then you're giving them your wisdom, man's wisdom, not God's wisdom. This is what we speak, not in words taught us by human wisdom, but in words taught by the Spirit, expressing spiritual truths in spiritual words. The man without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, and he cannot understand them. You're going to be speaking from your own wisdom. The other person may just reject it. May just reject what you say, nah. You know, they may say or acknowledge that you said something and I appreciate that or whatever, but they'll walk away and not feel like you were with them. And ultimately what we want that person to feel is, you were really with me. You were really with me. Because that's what Jesus is all the time to us. And if we can just give people a little touch, a little taste of what it's like to have somebody with them. Some people have never had that experience, lots of people. When I used to do intakes in the counseling session, I would do tons of them. And I would match people to counselors. And when I did those intakes, I would ask the question, who around you really cares about you? And if you had a crisis, do you have people you could call? And I would say 70 to 80% had no one. No. Which says to me, they have not experienced presence. And still they're amongst people all the time. And my practice was primarily pastors. This is a very sad thing in our world. We're so detached from each other. The spiritual man makes judgments about all things, but he himself is not subject to any man's judgment. For who has known the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. Just sit in that passage and just see what it has to say about how we help, how we care for people.
What was that reference?
1 Corinthians 2, 6 through 16. 1 Corinthians 2, 6 through 16. You know what? I love this sentence. Listen to it. When you bring your true self in Christ, that person will experience Christ in you. So if you are present with the Spirit of God, then they have an experience of Christ through you because he is in you. And that involves being genuinely you, that has a quiet spirit, open to love, and a safety in which you are not judging and evaluating. I want to take a little bit of time and talk about listening. What does it mean to listen? Because we have worlds that are blaring at us all the time. You came here, I had, even just driving here, I had a car come right up to my rear end. Then he went around me and just kind of went right in front. And I was going over the speed limit as it was. It wasn't that I was going slow. And so then we got to a light, and I just thought, I'm going to get away from this guy. So I pulled in the other lane, and and as soon as we went down Brea Boulevard, I was going down. He just came up alongside of me, and he was yelling something out his window. I couldn't hear it. My windows were closed. But I mean, I was just driving here peacefully, and the world was blaring at me. You know, and that's not unusual. This happens all the time. We have an angry society, a place where people are blaring at us all the time. And to listen with sensitivity, this is just a whole new thing to a lot of people. That somebody is listening to them in a way that is really coming from their heart. And so I got 4 things that I'd like you to think about in terms of listening. And they come from Lisa Meyer. I don't know if you've read any of her books, but Lisa Meyer is a wonderful spiritual director, and she's done some writing. This was just an article of hers. But she said, number 1, you need to listen with sensitivity, like I said. This is what she means by that. You resist the desire to jump in and start talking. How many times are you listening to somebody and you have something you just gotta say? A story you gotta tell. You know, it's on the tip of your tongue. And you just wanna jump in. Well, if you're listening sensitively, you don't jump in and start talking. You don't interrupt. You let a person finish to the very end before you start, okay? Another part of listening sensitively is suspend the notion that you must get your message to God and concentrate on His message to you. So it's sort of like you're sitting there listening, and suddenly you have this thing that you know what God would say, and you have to say it. You know, or you have something even in prayer to God you want to say to Him, and suddenly your prayer gets filled with lots of words, and you're no longer listening for the voice of the Spirit. Our prayers, if you pray and you talk the whole time in prayer, try something. Try an experiment and cut your prayer in half. And pray half the time, pray the same length of time, but pray half that time with talking and the other half with listening. And see what happens. See what you hear. See what comes up in your heart. We spend far too much time talking when we should be listening. And so we don't hear that small voice of God. The second thing she says is listen from your heart. Listen with your heart. How do you listen with your heart? Well, you listen with your heart by being careful to listen to the sounds around you, the sights around you, the thoughts you're having, the feelings you're having, and the awareness that occupies your silence. What goes on when you're silent and the other person is speaking? What is happening as they're talking to you? What are you seeing? What are the sounds that are coming? Sometimes what you're seeing is they're talking and they're like this. You have to pay attention to that. It's saying to you, I'm scared to death to talk about what's really inside of me. I'm going to hang on to it for all I can get. Sometimes you're just seeing, they're sitting in front of you like this, and this foot is just going a mile a minute. You know? There's some therapists who say, why is your foot moving? What's going on with your foot? You know, Fritz Perls would do that. He would say, why are you sitting so stiff with that thing in front of you? You know, he would pick out whatever he sees, and he would make you look at the truth of yourself through the way you're acting. One of the things that men do a lot is twirled already, wedding rings. It just, they can't let go of their wedding rings when they're anxious. So you want to pay attention to some of that. That says to me, I have to be really gentle. This person is anxious. It's not safe yet for them to really express what's going on inside. They need time to just be with me and get to a place where they're feeling safety. So you got to listen to your heart about what is this person expressing that they don't even know they're expressing. Some women twirl their hair. I put mine up today, so there's nothing to twirl, but some people twirl their hair the whole time. I had one woman who was really depressed, and she'd always sit in the couch corner as far away from me as she could. And she would come in, and and her depression had a lot of inward anger, because depression is about anger turned inward. Angry, but you're putting it all on yourself. And I can remember I would ask her a question. It would take her sometimes 20 minutes before she'd respond. And I would just sit there and watch her. And I could see the anger build because she'd hold on to that couch. And pretty soon her knuckles were pure white. And she was just like gritting her teeth with her hand. You know what I mean? You know, it was just, that anger was just pouring out. And I would just say, what's going on? What's going on? And the tears would flow. You know, because behind the anger is always pain. We don't feel anger without having a ton of pain behind there. So you gotta pay attention to things. You gotta be sensitive to what you see. Don't just talk with somebody and don't look at them. You have listened with your heart. You have not listened with your heart until you have risked allowing your vision to be changed. That means what I think is going on might not be what's really going on. Do you risk, can you risk what the Spirit of God might be telling you? This takes humility and submission. Because you'll always have a thought of your own. Because we just do. You know? We just think we know. But you really haven't listened with the heart of God until you have risked allowing His vision to take over what you think might be going on. Another way you should listen is listen like a child. Listen like a child. Grown-ups disbelieve and they close off. And they're closed off to the mystery of the Spirit. A lot of grown-ups don't like mystery. They want to know. They want to know the truth. They want to know what the answer is. They want to know how to fix it. They want to know. And in their wanting to know, they're closed off to the mystery of what God only knows. That's what 1 Corinthians says. God is the only one who really knows the heart of a man except the man himself. And are you closed off to that mystery? Or are you willing to open up and listen like a child with wonder? Children see things and they ask, why? How come? What's going on? Any of you have had children or worked with children, you know that children, it's not hard for them to hear the unbelievable. It's amazing to me how little kids have picked up all these different video games. I mean, some of the video games that these kids play are complicated. You know, my grandson has one where you grow things and then you grow so many things and then you get gems from other people and they have friends and I don't even know what the game is called.
The farm, yeah.
What is it?
It's farming.
Farming, is that what it is? But it is, I mean, he's trying to explain to me how to give him gems, you know? And it's like, I just have a hard time following all this stuff. But kids are so full of entering into things that are imaginable and mystery, and they want to see things happen, and they don't have to know it all. They can just enter into that. And that's the way we should be when we listen to a person. We should listen with wonder. I wonder what they're going to say next. When I ask them to pray, I wonder what they'll hear. I wonder what might come up. And when something comes up, Lord, help me to have something to respond. See, part of not wanting to listen with wonder is because you're afraid you will be struck dumb in some ways. You won't have the answer that they're wanting. But that's for the Spirit of God to give them. As we wonder, they can then enter into that place of listening for the Spirit of God. My throat's getting dry. Thank you, John, for this word. So you listen like a child. The last one is you listen with expectancy. See, if we have the answer, there's no mystery, there's no wonder, and there's no expectancy that Jesus is going to show up, or the Spirit of God is going to show up, because we don't really need them. We already know what we have to tell them, what they need to do, how they need to grow, and there's no expectancy about what Jesus might show them, or what Jesus might show us. Whenever the Spirit of God is working in the midst of two people, and that's really sacred space between two people and the Spirit of God working, you think He's just taking His time to work on the person you're listening to? He's taking His time to work on you too. And do you expect that? Do you expect to grow and learn when you're working with another, when you're talking with another? Because Jesus doesn't waste time. He's going to teach both of you. So are you expectant? Another part of that is He came so that we might have an intimate relationship with His Father that He has. So He is working in the two of you all the time to bring you to deeper levels of love for His Father. It just is. Because the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit always work in unity together. And so they are going to do what it takes for you to come into the same kind of unity and love that Jesus has for the Father. He is our entrance into that love. And He wants to awaken us to that deeper love. And so we need to listen with expectancy. Now, I want you to try a little attending. I've talked before I do that, I'm going to have you do a little exercise first, and then I'm going to go into a list of things you're attending to. But I want you to all stand up. Put your notes down. I want you to all stand up for a minute.